Have you ever wondered what it looks like when the invisible hand of God reaches into the chaos of war, not as a metaphor, but as something real, precise, timed, and undeniably powerful? Today's story isn't just about Israel's military triumphs. It's about 17 moments, both ancient and modern, where wars turned, not because of strategy or power, but because something unexplainable happened. Let's start with a question. How does a tiny nation, surrounded by hostile enemies, outnumbered and outgunned, not only survive, but often walk away victorious? You might say strategy, technology, dialogue. But what if, just what if, there's something else? Operation Rising Lion, a mission that should have failed. No drones failed, no casualties. Some called it military genius, others a miracle. In 2025, Iran launched a massive missile assault on Israel. Hundreds of rockets filled the skies, and most of the world braced for disaster. The attackers, convinced they were up against an entire battalion, the operation required split-second precision. It wasn't just risky, it was near impossible. But Israel responded with Operation Rising Lion, a mission that military experts quietly predicted would go wrong. To strike 900 military targets deep inside Iranian territory, Israeli jets and drones flew over 2,000 miles, weaving through heavily fortified airspace, intercepted almost 90% of everything. But because they happened to be delayed, rerouted, or nudged to safety at the last moment. Coincidence? All aimed at civilian centers, and yet not a single aircraft was lost. One commander put it plainly: every system clicked, every timing was perfect. In another, a drone lost GPS control and harmlessly dropped into a desert zone. A reminder, perhaps, of Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still. And the Jewish defenders, outmanned and outgunned, were saved. That doesn't just happen while their planes were still grounded, but that mistake may have saved an entire nation. But in just 6 days, Israel turned the tide and defeated all three. It struck the surgical wing, leveled it. But here's what made headlines, and here is the part that made even skeptics pause. Some analysts compared it to divine choreography. The reason, just in time. Could this be modern warfare guided by an ancient promise? 1948, the birth of a nation, the beginning of the impossible. Let us rewind to 1948. Israel had just declared independence when 5 Arab armies attacked from every side. No real army, no air force, just refugees, many Holocaust survivors, fighting for their lives with outdated rifles and makeshift weapons. We're left with questions, not about tactics, but about timing, protection, even destiny. In a place called Gush Etzion, Jewish fighters were outnumbered 20-1. Bullets flew, yet some defenders reported that enemy rounds missed them point blank. In another case, one lone machine gunner kept an entire Arab platoon at bay simply by changing positions. A fluke, or fulfillment of Psalm 91:7. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. 2-0 for 205. The missiles that never made it. Fast forward to 2024 and 2025. Iran's direct assault on Israel was called the most intense missile barrage in modern history. Drones, cruise missiles, long-range ballistic threats. Yet Israel's missile defense system, Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, did something no one expected. But here is the twist. Many civilians survived not because of tech. In one case, a missile aimed at a packed apartment complex in Tel Aviv suddenly shifted mid-flight, landing in an empty lot. The perfect, even U.S. analysts said, it's like the system worked beyond what we know it's capable of. The soldiers who saw angels, Egypt, 1948. During the same 1948 war, a battalion of Egyptian troops was marching toward Tel Aviv when they suddenly stopped and retreated. A captured Egyptian officer later claimed they saw white-robed soldiers descending from the hills. Others described them as shining beams. Eyewitness hallucination? Maybe. But the retreat happened. The 1967 Six-Day War, when time itself shifted in June 1967, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan surrounded Israel with overwhelming force. Victory seemed impossible. Here's the mind-bending part. On day one, Israel launched Operation Focus, a preemptive strike that wiped out the Egyptian Air Force. How? Egypt had deactivated its radar for 2 hours, the exact window of the Israeli strike. A training mistake, they claimed. 2025, the hospital strike that killed no one in June 2025. Israel's Soroka Medical Center was targeted by an Iranian ballistic missile. Hours before, the department was mysteriously evacuated, not due to any warning, but because of an unplanned reorganization. Every patient and doctor had moved. The missile didn't even detonate properly. No one died. One nurse said, "If we had waited 30 minutes, we would have been crushed." Can timing be random, or was this Exodus 12 all over again? God telling his people when to stay inside because something was coming. The takeaway for part one, when we look at these stories, ancient and modern, we're left with more than just military reports. We'll continue in part two with more cases, including disappearing rockets, phantom tanks, and the missile that froze midair, and ask the same question: are these coincidences or signs that something greater still watches over Israel? We've already looked at moments where wars shifted, not because of superior power, but because something strange, almost divine, stepped in. But there's more, and it gets even more baffling the deeper we go. Let's dive into more real-world events where technology, timing, and pure chance couldn't fully explain the outcomes. And this time, we'll add in stories from the people who were their soldiers, civilians, commanders, witnesses to what felt like something far beyond human design. The missile that froze in the sky. Gaza. 2021 sirens went off. Residents scrambled for cover. Then, something bizarre happened. The rocket stopped, midair, hung in place for seconds, then disintegrated. One of the most widely shared but rarely explained incidents happened during the conflict between Israel and Hamas in 2021. No Iron Dome activation, no countermeasure, just a frozen threat. As if time paused, a rocket launched from Gaza was headed straight for Tel Aviv. Could this be? That footage exists. Analysts blame the malfunction, but IDF insiders admitted off record they had never seen anything like it. Why? There is a phrase from the Psalms that echoes here. He will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. The tanks that never advanced. Golan Heights, 1973. Others described a feeling of dread, like they weren't alone. During the Yom Kippur War, Syria had launched a surprise invasion into the Golan Heights. They heard the whine of a missile closing in. It just stopped. We were all bracing for impact, and silence followed. Hundreds of tanks surged toward a thin Israeli line, outnumbered nearly 10-1. In the heat of the battle, something extraordinary occurred. According to Israeli commanders, several Syrian tanks stopped moving, completely operational, full of fuel, but the crews had abandoned them. One night, they were under heavy rocket fire, sheltering in a thin outpost bunker. Prisoners later claimed they saw visions, figures walking among the tanks, glowing. Impossible to shoot, still survives, and so, a dozen tanks perfectly functional were left behind. The IDF used them to turn the tide. Real story, we should have died that night. 6 days, total win. In 2022, during another wave of conflict, a young IDF soldier named Eli was stationed near the northern border. A direct hit seemed certain, yet civilian deaths are astonishingly low. Infrastructure remains mostly intact, and the military responds with precision. How? Question is, why do so many of their lucky breaks look eerily like divine interventions? And then, nothing, Eli recalled. But even the best systems have failure rates. The pilot, barely conscious, should have blacked out. Yet, he safely landed at an airbase on the coast. The next morning, they found the missile intact but unexploded, embedded harmlessly in the earth just meters from them. I don't remember landing. I remember praying. Eli, not a particularly religious man, said, "I'm not saying I saw an angel, but I started praying. After that, the numbers game. Israel's impossible math. Intelligence had reported a militant base operating beneath a local school. The dilemma: strike and risk children, or hold off, of course. They have brilliant minds, advanced tech, elite units. Let's step back and look at the numbers. 1948, 5 nations attack Israel. Population less than 1 million. Victory. 1967, surrounded on all sides by hostile forces. 1973, caught off guard during the holiest day. 2024 to 2025, faces a coalition backed by Iran. With cyber attacks, drones, and long-range strikes, Israel invests in defense. Sure, tanks that stop without cause, lives saved by delays, power outages, or a feeling, but something deeper runs through it. A collective memory of survival, a faith that they're not alone in battle. The question isn't whether Israel defends itself well, but the empty school, Gaza. 2025, one chilling case happened during a targeted airstrike in Gaza. At the very moment the strike was launched, the school had been mysteriously evacuated. No alarms, no drills, just no one there. Parents said they felt a strong sense not to send their kids that morning. Teachers claimed plumbing and power had randomly failed. Whatever the reason, no children were harmed, despite what could have been a global tragedy or a thread of divine preservation running through. History, coincidence, or something that bends our idea of logic. Planes that shouldn't have made it back. A classified report later released in 2026 revealed that several Israeli fighter jets returning from Iran had low fuel, damaged wings, and jammed comms. One F-35's oxygen system failed mid-flight. His flight data, missing 15 minutes of tracking. His words after stepping out, even seasoned pilots started calling this the ghost escort, the hidden hand behind it all. Now, let's address the skeptics. Is it possible that Israel's victories are purely strategic? But here's the thing, miracles don't require proof, only presence. And the sheer number of unexplained escapes, near misses, and silent warnings defy statistical normalcy. At what point do coincidences stop being coincidences? The psychology of belief in battle. There's another angle here. Psychological resilience. Israeli civilians and soldiers alike are trained to act decisively in crisis. Stories from scripture: David and Goliath, Gideon's 300, Joshua at Jericho aren't just taught. They're believed, internalized, carried into every conflict. And belief, it changes everything. It gives people the will to stand when reason says run. Takeaway. For part 2, we've explored rockets that don't explode. So again, we're left with a choice: random chance? In next part, we'll explore ancient biblical prophecies that many believe directly point to modern Israel's survival and what it could mean for the future. At this point in our journey, we've seen events that defy logic, survival against odds that seem insurmountable, and stories that feel more like ancient legends than military reports. But what if this isn't just history? What if it's prophecy in motion? Let us now dive into what ancient texts said about Israel, destined centuries before it was even a modern state. And ask, are we witnessing something far bigger than geopolitics? And for nearly 2,000 years, that's exactly what happened. A people scattered, then returned. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses warns the Israelites that they will one day be scattered among all nations. After the Roman destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, Jews were exiled across the globe, from Babylon to Berlin, Morocco to Moscow. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "No land, no army, no national identity." And yet, they remain Jewish. No other nation in human history has experienced that and returned. Then, in 1948, a miracle, Israel is reborn. Then, by divine breath, they rise. Flesh returns, spirit enters, the nation lives again. Can a country be born in a day, or a nation be brought forth in a moment? Isaiah 66:8. Yes, it was. It was almost as if Isaiah saw the UN vote unfold on May 14, 1948, when, after millennia of silence, the name Israel returned to the map. Coincidence or fulfillment? Ezekiel's vision, the dry bones. He helped shape peace talks, negotiated with presidents, and defended the country in wartime. Only in Israel, one of the most vivid prophetic images comes from Ezekiel 37, starving. The book of Amos has this line: broken, displaced. The nation hasn't been uprooted. It's grown economically, culturally, militarily. The prophet sees a valley of dry bones representing Israel scattered, lifeless. A rocket had struck just outside but didn't explode. Her apartment was shaken, but intact. His entire family was murdered, but Yehuda survived and immigrated to Israel. In post-Holocaust Europe, Jewish survivors stumbled out of death camps. They were the dry bones. But just a few years later, they walked into the newborn land of Israel, built homes, grew crops, had children, and fought off 5 invading armies. Not just survival, resurrection. Real story. Holocaust to hero. Let's zoom out. Let me tell you about Yehuda Abner. He was just a boy during the Holocaust, living in fear in Nazi-occupied Europe. Years later, he became an advisor to multiple Israeli prime ministers. How does a child from a ghetto become a voice of a nation? Only with a story that refuses to die. The prophetic blueprint. I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them. Think about that. Since 1948, every war, every threat, every attempt to erase Israel has failed. Fair point. Coincidence, or something far more scripted? Why? The unseen war, spirit versus strategy. Israel's survival has always involved more than weapons. In 2021, during an intense barrage of rockets, an Israeli woman named Rina was praying in her living room when she heard a loud boom. She later found her prayer book torn open to Psalm 91. You might not even believe in prophecy. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. It reflects something deeper about all of us. We could call it fate or malfunction, but for people like Rina, it was confirmation. God is not done with Israel. That even when we feel forgotten or broken, there might be a larger story unfolding, one we can't always see, but are still part of. This was a story about destiny, written in pain, sealed in survival, and sung in the streets of Jerusalem to this day. Just witnessed the modern miracle no one talks about. If it challenged you, sit with it. If it inspired you, keep seeking. Israel has the highest number of startups per capita in the world. It leads in water technology, agriculture, and cybersecurity. Its citizens are among the most educated. Hebrew, once dead, is now a national language. This isn't just survival. This is revival. In just 75 years, a people who once wandered stateless through history now walk streets that their ancestors only dreamed about. And the world watches, some with awe, others with anger, but all with attention. Because something is happening here that cannot be ignored. Prophecy or projection? Skeptics say prophecy is just people making predictions and others looking for matches. But when thousands of years ago, a text says, you'll be scattered, you'll face destruction, you'll be hated, but you'll return to your land. You'll make the desert bloom, and you'll be surrounded, but not destroyed. And all of that happens on time. In order, it stops sounding like poetry. It starts sounding like a script. Final reflection. Why it matters to you. You might not be Jewish, but this story is Israel's. Story is a mirror about resilience, about hope, about how belief can carry people through fires no logic can explain. Israel's journey reminds us that we're not accidents of history, and perhaps if a scattered people can come home, if a nation can rise from ash, then maybe your life isn't as random as it feels either. This wasn't just a military documentary. It wasn't just prophecy trivia. If it moved you, share it. And remember, some stories aren't meant to be understood. See you in the next videos.